Welcome to Press TV's news review, where we look deeper into some of the top stories of the day. Stick around, everybody. On this news review, violence in Hong Kong as new clashes break out between police and anti-government protesters. Arrests were made after police tried to break up the protesters in a central district. The demonstrators have already paralyzed parts of the city as they set up barricades on major avenues. Many businesses and schools have been forced to close in the third consecutive day of chaos in Hong Kong. Anger is boiling after an unarmed protester was shot. The demonstrators accuse police of brutality. They also complain about what they see as China's meddling in the affairs of Hong Kong. China denies this and blames the UK and the US for the unrest. The anti-government rallies have been ongoing in Hong Kong for more than 5 months now. Joining us on this edition of the News Review, we have our correspondent in Beijing, Stephen Rebay, also political commentator and analyst Jason Unruhe joining us from Ontario. Gentlemen, welcome to the program. Let's start off with Stephen in Beijing. Stephen, what updates can you share with us with regards to the protests?
Well, today was the third day of chaos. The violence is getting more deadly, as a police spokesman said. In a press conference, he said that the city is now on the brink of total collapse. On Monday, we saw some shocking incidences, including a man set alight after an altercation with some protesters. Another protester was shot on camera by a policeman. The protesters have been upgrading their gear from the normal umbrellas, goggles, gas masks, and safety helmets with bricks and petrol bombs. They're now using bows and arrows, javelins and catapults. There have been running battles through the night at university campuses. For example, the Chinese University of Hong Kong, its campus in Tai Po, has been the center of the violence. The police have accused the students of using it as a weapons factory. Transport has been disrupted. Several subway lines have been shut down. About a fifth of the city's buses have been shut down. The Education Ministry says no school for anybody tomorrow. It gave parents the option of not sending their students to class today. And in the middle of it all, we've got Carrie Lam, who's the chief executive of Hong Kong, just saying the protests have been extremely selfish, which kind of underlines the ineptitude of her handling of these protests since they started. The protesters now, it's a bit like a war now. They've forgotten the grievances now, the original grievances people have forgotten about. Now the grievances are more about the conduct of each side during the war. So, for example, the Hong Kong protesters are more angry about the police brutality now and Beijing's so-called meddling in the city's affairs. So it's almost like they've forgotten why the war started, and now they're just fighting because of what's happened in the war.
Jason Unruhe, as you can hear, our correspondent in Beijing, stating that it seems the initial grievances of the protesters have now been forgotten as the demonstrations persist. They say they want China's meddling in the affairs of Hong Kong to stop. On the other hand, China denies this and blames the United States and the UK for the unrest that's happening there. What's your perception on what's taking place in Hong Kong?
Well, I certainly would agree that this is the U.S. and the U.K. interfering in the affairs of China. I mean, it's a simple fact that Hong Kong is China. It's part of the same country. It shares the same history. It's the same people, etc. So to say that China is meddling in Hong Kong affairs is simply nonsensical. It's the same country. It's ridiculous. But I think that it is very accurate to be able to say that many of the demands that have been made by the rioters have simply been forgotten about. If this was about an extradition treaty, that treaty has basically already been abandoned. So they would have already gotten what it is that they want for the most part. But that's not what this is about anymore. This is about, being given an inch and taking a mile. This is essentially these these rioters are trying to abolish any kind of rule of law inside the country. And for many of these people, it has become violence for violence sake. They are, many of them are angry at the police for coming in and doing their jobs of stopping them from doing the damage, from hurting innocent. You get another video of innocent people being attacked, and now one of them being killed by being set on fire. You know, the police certainly do have a necessity to come in and shut this down. I mean, it's completely unacceptable to go around murdering innocent people. And as they increase the violence against the police have been showing a great deal of restraint, an amount of restraint that we wouldn't be seeing in many Western countries, police who would have responded in a much more violent manner. And of course, as you increase the violence against the police are going to increase the amount of violence in order to put down many of these riots. Some of this violence is seemingly for almost no reason other than to cause violence at this time. I mean, this can all be laid at the feet of the United States and the UK, who have given a great deal of material support, who have given political support to them, who have been photographed with the leaders trying desperately to create, I don't know, maybe it's an independent Hong Kong. They want to undermine one of the heavy financial sectors of China and move it closer to the United States or the UK, purely for their own ability for profit making. And I think that this is imperialist interference, pure and simple.
Stephen, one last question for you. What would be a step in the right direction to stop these protests?
I think, unfortunately, Carrie Lam, who's the chief executive of Hong Kong, she's been inept. She's not a politician, she's a civil servant. And this has been true of all the chief executives of Hong Kong. And she hasn't been very good at communicating with them. She's offered dialogue, but I think it's gone beyond that now. I think she's just dug in and she says that she's just going to wait these protests out. I'm not sure what the way forward would be. The protesters want her to resign. If they could get someone who was more responsive, better at dealing with this situation, that might be a step in the right direction. But it's not going to bring the protesters anywhere nearer to their demands, achieving their demands. So it's very unclear what the situation, what they would be right now.
All right, thanks a lot, Stephen. PressTV Stephen Ray joining us from Beijing. Also, thanks to political commentator and analyst Jason Unruhe joining us from Ontario. And with that, it brings us to an end here on this edition of PressTV's News Review. But do stay tuned. There's plenty more to come here on PressTV. Bye for now.